So, welcome everyone to this other edition of Astro Duets. Today we have Chris Mitchell and Rod Chang. We're going to be talking about Saturn semi-square Pluto. So, we are in the this cycle that started a few years ago, and now it's moving to the phase of the semi-square. Now, before we go into that, please remember that if you like these events, it's for us. It feels great that so many people show up to these events. One of the best ways that you can show your support. Also, of course, you can make donations, you can become a member of the association. And remember that another way to show support is just to spread the word. So if you know people who might be interested in coming to these Astro Duets, please let them know. And also the last big announcement actually is that remember at the end of August we have the conference. Depending on how many days you want to attend, it could be you can come on 28th of August until the very end of August, and it's going to be an amazing event. We're all very excited about it. Okay, so let's go
Oh,
with
yes. Sorry, Alejo. Sorry, Alejo. May I interrupt? Just add one thing.
yes.
Yeah, the discount. The discount end by 31st of May. So don't
Mhm.
miss up the opportunity, okay? I think you can get as big as like a £200 discount. So don't miss this chance, please. Register before 31st of May, okay? So I can get my, you know, I can get my job done. No, I didn't get any commission, but
Yeah,
so I
well
can get
done,
my
Rob.
job done,
Well played.
okay?
Nice. Yeah, thank you, Rod. Yes, it's true actually. Yeah. Okay, so now with Saturn Pluto, um, the first thing I would like to ask you too is, well, what each one of you think in general terms the Saturn Pluto cycle might be about? And then maybe we can move to this particular cycle and how it's manifesting.
Okay. Chris, do you want to start with?
Yeah, I'll start because I've got a slightly different angle on all this because I think
Yay!
many of you know I'm a traditional astrologer. I tend to specialize in medieval astrology. And I do know some medieval astrologers that would say, well, it doesn't mean anything because the ancients didn't know about Pluto and they just knew semi-squares. So end of story. We can all go home now. But
Yes, that's
the
why.
thing, the thing that I think is so beautiful about astrology is I think it's the universe talking to us, and the universe talks in many different languages. And it talks in modern astrology and it talks in medieval astrology, and they often give the same message. And I think this is the extraordinary thing here, because without the outer planets, the ancient Persians used to use cycles of Jupiter and Saturn to mark out large periods of time. Now, Jupiter-Saturn conjunctions are relatively common. They happen every 20 years, roughly. And when they do their little retrograde dance, then sometimes you get 2 or 3 hits in that 20-year cycle. But they tend to be in the same element every 20 years. So, for example, we've had a conjunction in 2020 in Aquarius. The next one going along will be in Libra, and it'll stay in air signs for a long time. And it tends to stay in air signs for about 240, in the same element for about 240 years. Then it switches element, and that change of element to the Persians was a major, major event. This was basically a new dynasty, if you like. And then, of course, it makes a full cycle roughly every 1,000 years, or every 960, but 1,000's near enough. And the Persians, because they had a religion called Zoroastrianism, were quite obsessed with the idea of the millennium and 1,000-year principles. They had a cosmology that said the universe is going to last for 12,000 years, and there's 6,000 years of light and 6,000 years of dark. So it was highly significant, these Jupiter-Saturn elemental changes. And we had a huge elemental change in 2020. And in many ways, this is similar to the way that modern astrologers use outer planets to delineate cycles of very long periods of time. And when I say that the universe speaks to us in different languages but gives the same message, just as we've got this Pluto semi-square Saturn coming up, so too that Jupiter-Saturn cycle that started in 2020, we're now at the quarter phase of that. It's not quite kicked in yet. It's going to kick in August, and it's going to carry on for about a year. So it's got this same sense of, okay, something dramatic. You had a new beginning And a new beginning is often like planting a seed. You don't necessarily notice it at the time, but the first fruits start to spring up maybe at the sextile. And then when you get to the square, this is where the first challenges arise. So we're at a stage now in this Jupiter-Saturn cycle that I think has quite a similar flavour to the Pluto semi-square Saturn. And although I joke that traditional astrologers don't like outer planets and aspects like semi-squares, that's not strictly true. Most of the traditional astrologers I know do use the outer planets. I certainly do. And if you're going to criticize non-Ptolemaic aspects, I refer you to the master of astrology, William Lilly, who was aware of Kepler's new aspects, as he called them. This was in the 17th century, in the 1600s. Kepler was a contemporary of Lilly, an older one. And Kepler said, you need to use things like semi-squares, quintiles. He invented these aspects. And William Lilly said, yes, you must use these new aspects. And Lilly even had a little heart symbol for a quintile that I think we should resurrect. He also had this, you know, the semi-square glyph that we use now as well. And he said, yeah, use them. So we have a long history of traditional astrologers saying, yes, use these new things as they're discovered, whether they be planets, aspects, and so on. So that's my two penneth.
And sorry, Chris, can I ask you something that you said that caught my attention? You
Mm.
said the first fruits come on the sextile, not so much in the semi-square.
Well, it depends which. Yeah, I tend to find when I'm looking at cycles that the sextile is, oh, look, there's the first green shoots. That's quite a happy time. Oh, yes, my seed has actually grown. It's easy. It's a nice, easy aspect. It's not challenging when you see those green shoots. When it gets challenging is when you get the semi-square and the slugs start eating them and you've got to do something about it.
Okay, nice, interesting. Thank you. So, Rod, what's your view on this
Well,
idea of cycle?
I'm so glad that Chris to pave things away like this, because yes, I think when we look at the semi-square about the Saturn Pluto cycle, it is the first one since 2020, as Chris mentioned about it, because we have our previous conjunction at 2020. And that is coincident, work together, very, very, very close to the Jupiter-Saturn cycle. And I was so curious, to be honest, because I was so curious, because I know Chris is more working on medieval side, and I know he will definitely go to talk about the Saturn Pluto. But I just curious how he could interpret it, and I think it is an amazing way to, I think, work together with Jupiter-Saturn cycle. It's amazing. And that was so fascinating. I'm so happy to hear about that. It is very interesting to see, or very difficult to not see Saturn-Pluto cycle as a doomed or unpleasant cycle. And I just want to show you something. I didn't prepare any slides, but I'm going to show you the slides I prepared for 2019 in the AA conference. I gave a talk about Saturn-Pluto conjunction cycle. And this is what I talk during this is my slides. I find it out. Alejo, could you make me share the scenes? So make it co-host or something so I can share. I just share one. I just share the opening page about this. Okay, and you were just laughing.
Now you should be able to do it.
Yeah. This is my slide, the first slides I give to everyone in 2019 in the summer. This is not the end of the world. I'm really sorry. I think it was when I study all the events happen during the during the Saturn Pluto cycle. It was so dark, so doomed. And if you go back,
Sorry.
Rod, you're muted.
I don't know why. I just click not sharing and then it stopped. It mute me again. Well, when you go back to this important book, especially published by Astrological Association, if you don't have one, if you love mundane astrology, please go to get one. Okay, André Bobo's important work. And I think Wendy, Chris, and Roy spent a lot of time to promote this book. When you check the book, it's just really, really dark, really dark. So it's like you hardly to give a hope. But it is very interesting to see this Saturn Pluto cycle. So we trying to find a positive way out of it, and it's a challenge for all the astrologer. If we are living in a kind of uncertain time, and we still have to, make something to believe that that is not that terrible.
Yeah. Yeah. So I like this idea that the cycles are not happening alone. So the Jupiter-Saturn cycle is happening at the same time of the Saturn-Pluto cycle. And I like this idea that you're saying, okay, it's not the end of the world. It's a seed that it's being planted, like Chris was saying, right? It's going to develop and we're going to see what it's about. So
Yeah.
because I think you both linked the Jupiter-Saturn with Saturn-Pluto. What can you say in a few words what you think the Jupiter-Saturn is about and the Saturn-Pluto is about?
How about Chris
Well,
first?
Saturn-Pluto, maybe you said now a few things. Chris, a few ideas on the Jupiter-Saturn. What is it about?
Well, Jupiter Saturn is about new beginnings. You've got the great malefic and the great benefic coming together. Jupiter is also about expansion, Saturn's about restriction. So I think the whole thing is about balance, but it's also, Saturn, of course, is the great timekeeper because until they discovered Uranus, Saturn was the outermost planet. So that was the guardian of the universe, if you like, that patrolled the boundary. So it is really about new beginnings, new epochs. And as for what it portends, well, that depends on, what sign it's in, what element it's in, and so on.
So for this one, this Jupiter-Saturn cycle that we're living in now, what would you say it might be related to?
Well, it's in air signs, and everybody thinks, in modern astrology, we tend to think of Aquarius as quirky and so on. But actually, of course, Aquarius is traditionally, Aquarius is ruled by Saturn. And Aquarius can be quite harsh. We think of Aquarius as being revolutionary, but I think that's because we tend to associate with Uranus, and Uranus is associated with revolutions. Although ironically, when they discovered Uranus, they were originally going to call it George after King George, who is not exactly a revolutionary, quite the opposite, because he was the one on the throne when the American Revolution happened, and that definitely wasn't George's idea. And I think that Aquarius and air signs in general can have a tendency to say, well, we're more interested in this greater social good. And that might mean that individuals take, that you take difficult decisions that might hurt individuals in order to have the greater good. And I think, movements like the environmental movement and so on are asking us to make sacrifices in order to make sure that the environment is secure for the future. And I think it was interesting that Obama, everybody said, oh, well, he's an Aquarian. And the first thing that happened when Obama first came to power is people said, well, he doesn't seem to be want a special relationship in, hey, this is my best mate, like George Bush did with Tony Blair. And that's because as an Aquarian, he was like, well, actually, I have these ideals that I want to go, and that doesn't depend on chumming up to one particular prime minister or one particular president. It's looking at the world as a whole. So, and I think it's potentially quite positive because Saturn does rule Aquarius traditionally, and Jupiter has dignity in air signs as well, traditionally, if you use what are called the Dorothean triplicities, where each element has 3 rulers, and Jupiter is one of those rulers. So I think they can actually work quite well together because rather than seeing things as good and bad, malefic and benefic, I think Jupiter is, I was likened to your favorite uncle who gives you loads of Easter eggs and then you're violently sick because you've eaten too much chocolate. And Saturn's the one that takes them away from you and rations them. And you need a bit of both. And when you're teaching, you can't just say, hi, students, here's the course. I'm going to give it to you all to you in one lump. You have to say, I'm going to feed this to you bit by bit. You need some structure. So Jupiter is the knowledge. Saturn is the structure that makes you able to digest it. So I think they can work quite well together. And what are airy themes? Well, I mean, I would say things like AI are obviously something that is not just Aquarian, but airy generally. So that would be my take on it.
Mm. Okay, nice. So we have the Jupiter-Saturn cycle, which is happening on air signs, but then when we try to incorporate the Saturn-Pluto, the Saturn-Pluto conjunction was in Capricorn, right? So what
Yeah.
would you say this might be about? I don't know, Rod, if you want to take this one.
Okay, yes. I would like to continue what Chris talking about, but I want to see this in two ways. One is I want to explain about the coincidence of two aspects in the different cycle. But before that, I just have a crazy mind jump out, and I want to share with. I still don't know what does that mean, but I want to share this so we can discuss, or we just say no, Rod is crazy. One thing is that from the mythology view, the Jupiter-Saturn is encounter of the Zeus, Jupiter, the wealthy one, with the Saturn, with the either limit one or make it come true one or harvest one. Okay, we may think about Pluto is nothing to do with good things, but never forget in Roman time, Pluto is the guardian of the treasure of underworld. I still a treasure there. Still, I just I still remember. There's one time I think is American show called Saturday Night Live. They are mocking about why there is no money god in the Greek mythology. And then Pluto jump out and say, you all forget about me. I'm the money god. And I was like, oh, yes, of course. He is the treasure. He is the holding of the treasure on the ground. So I think the major theme, I don't know, I'm maybe crazy. It could be related to wealthy and those unnoticeable wealthy or those money or those treasure we haven't noticed yet. Maybe there's one related up. Another one, I want to see it from the cycle's view. So our current Jupiter-Saturn cycle is on the mutable sign. So the coming up Jupiter in Gemini square Saturn in Pisces, both in the mutable sign, and there's a feeling about uncertainty. From the financial astrology view, both planets are stay in a kind of a unstable period for the financial astrology, especially Jupiter between Gemini to Cancer. Even Cancer is a Jupiter exaltation sign, but still a lot of economic problems happen during that time. Saturn in the financial astrology view, Saturn really act badly when Saturn is in mutable sign, Virgo, Sag, Gemini, or Pisces. Usually we are kind of wobbling whole system. Saturn, whole system is wobbling. So when they square each other, we have that feeling about, God, everything is uncertain. We don't know where to go. Then that is cause that panic or worrying, and everything is uncertain. That's the Jupiter-Saturn square. We want to make it go. We want to make it happen. We want to make it better. But we still don't know how, because the first square is there. We're building up square. We're building up the things. We're building up the conjunction in the Aquarius about all the technology, all the space, all the AI thing. We have a satellite in outside of us solar system. We don't know how to fix it, and we have the AI. We don't know is that going to make us living in the matrix world or not. But very interesting. Saturn Pluto is also about that. What do we say? The things we cannot see, because Pluto is a hidden thing. We are fear about the hidden thing. So there is the double whammy about uncertainty in this cycle. I don't say they work together, but coincidentally, they both focus on uncertainty and things we are not seeing. So I think these two cycles, the major thing of these two cycles comes together, there is a little bit worrying about that. And I think before we really step into the Jupiter-Saturn square, we will be more clear. We will be more clear. We know a little bit, but we still doubt. But when we come to the first waxing square, we probably more confidence about future, probably about more clear about what we're going to do. But at this moment, we just like, ugh, we still don't know what's going on, and we're still trying to figure that out.
And of course, the whole thing about new beginnings, I should
Yeah.
have mentioned this, is really emphasized because that Saturn-Jupiter conjunction, the first exact conjunction, was on the equinox. Sorry, not the equinox, the solstice, the winter solstice, the 21st of December, 2020.
Yes. Yeah.
So that's always a new beginning. Any the solstices and equinoxes are key points for new beginnings. Okay, I know that the spring equinox is the main one, but the winter solstice is significant too. But of course, where were they? They were at naught Aquarius. So that's a new beginning. It wasn't just a Jupiter-Saturn conjunction in Aquarius. It was at naught Aquarius. And of course, Pluto was still in Capricorn at the time, but has now moved into Aquarius. So I think this whole cycle has got a very Aquarian flavor to it.
Yeah,
of course, the thing you were mentioning about, because you mentioned Barbo earlier, Rod, although this isn't directly related to the semi-square of Pluto and Saturn, of course, Barbo has this idea of an index of measure the distance between all the planets from Saturn outwards, and so, or it might even be Jupiter outwards. And when they're all bunched up together, that tends to be periods of crisis. And Barbo is the only person I know who 10 years before it happened, in 2010, said 2020 is going to be a pretty major year for all sorts of problems, and there could be a pandemic. And that was really quite remarkable. He published that in the AA Journal in, I think it was 2010. So he's one of the few people that actually predicted it using an unconventional technique. I mean, the idea of measuring all the distance between planets, it's not a traditional astrological technique in modern or traditional astrology.
Wow.
I agree. That indexing still fascinating, still blow my mind off. And I don't know why I still refuse to eat it. You just put everything together. We're just like, why? Why are we doing that? Even I'm a modern astrologer, but when I see those things, I'm like, why?
If you look at it for the 14th century, there was also another similar thing that coincided with the Black Death. So there are echoes of this when you look at it historically as well. It's extraordinary. Not that the ancients would have known about how to use that cycle because they didn't know any of those planets, but it is fascinating.
And this index, you calculate it by looking at the distance between the different planets from Jupiter onwards.
So you look at the number of degrees between Jupiter and Saturn, Jupiter and Uranus, Jupiter and Neptune, Jupiter and Pluto. Then you add on Saturn to Uranus and so on, and then you end up with a number. And if the planets are all distributed reasonably evenly around the zodiac, that's quite a big number. But when they're all bunched up together, as they are at the moment, really, and certainly have been for the last few years, that's a much smaller number. And so you end up with this graph of peaks and troughs that seem to coincide to international events.
Well, very interesting. I want to read some of the stuff people are saying on the chat box because it's nice, I think, to always have.
Yes.
Currently saying I was born on a Pluto-Saturn square, and it was the Suez Canal Crisis War, and the Hungarian Revolution. Okay, and it was the square. Now we're in the semi-square, so we'll see to what it piles up. We already have a lot of, war kind situations. Then Dimfi is saying, I recommend Cosmos and Psyche from Richard Tarnas as well. Yeah, excellent book. And then Nila is saying Obama has the Sun in Leo and Aquarius ascendant. Okay, because you were talking about Obama, Chris. And then Mark.
I thought he had Sun in Aquarius.
I don't know, to be honest.
Leo. I see it's Leo.
Really? Oh, okay.
Yeah, but ascendant, Aquarius ascendant.
Oh, it's Aquarius ascendant. Yeah, of course. Oh, my mistake. Sorry.
You can't remember all of the charts. It's impossible. Mark is saying the Jupiter-Saturn square in August this year has Jupiter 17 Gemini square Saturn 17 Pisces. Yeah, so like what Rod was saying, this idea that they're both immutable signs. The Jupiter and Saturn cycle is used for the business cycle, yes, and financial astrology, like Rod was saying, yeah. And When are and where are the next two Jupiter-Saturn conjunctions? Do you know? Have you checked?
Yeah, the next
Yeah,
Jupiter-Saturn conjunction is at 16 Libra, so still in an air sign. And the one after that, I haven't done that one.
zero Gemini, zero Gemini,
Yeah, it'll be in Gemini, won't it?
2060,
Yes, yeah.
2060, yeah.
Mm.
In April, 7th of April, zero Gemini, 0 degree Gemini.
Right. Oh, brilliant. Thank you, Rod.
Yeah.
Wow. And then Caroline is also saying that she relates Saturn Pluto with the idea of getting things done. What do you think about this, Chris and Rod?
Well, I think Saturn does like to get things done and likes things to be done properly. Pluto forces you to reconsider things and think outside the box, I think. Rob Hand always said that if the ancients did know about the outer planets, they considered them to be malefics because they're all about change, and human beings don't like change. You know, we're still alive. We must have been doing something right all these years, so we don't want to change. But obviously, change is vital, change is necessary, but we don't like it as human beings.
Yeah, maybe we're alive because we change.
But then maybe we would still be single cell amoeba if we'd never changed.
Yeah. To me, the idea of Saturn Pluto cycle, to me, I think I like this idea of Rod of things that are invisible. And I think it's about like what we're made of. This idea, that Saturn rules structures and Pluto rules what's hidden underneath. So I like this idea that Saturn, Pluto together, they are talking about what we're made of. And I felt like during 2020 and the 2021 actually, and yeah, a little 22 also, I felt like more and more we've been tested into questioning inside what is our essence, what is our richness, like Rod was saying, what constitutes us, like in a more personal, individual way. I think in so many ways we were challenged to face for everyone our shadow. Like I remember, for instance, with the pandemic and having to stay inside. I remember like some people were saying, yeah, I'm becoming a workaholic because now I'm inside so I can work all the time now that I can work online. But then some people were saying my anxious is picking up because I'm afraid I'm gonna get COVID no matter what I do. So, and I was seeing people and I was thinking, no, it's not that. It's not that. Of course, the context is kind of pushing you to see this, but this is not provoked by the context. It's something that was inside of you, and now it's emerging because, of course, you are locked at your house, so you are forced to see your shadow. And I think this Saturn Pluto is a little bit about that. I don't know. Do you think it makes sense, Chris? Rod?
Well, you go, Rod.
Okay.
You can disagree. I mean, you don't have
Yeah,
to.
but no, I think this is definitely make sense. Let us look from the we already talked about the symbolic of both planets, Saturn and the Pluto, and they are kind of a Pluto is what hidden inside of our heart from the little bit more modern psychological astrology view, and also what is our deep collective unconsciousness, and that about the life and death. That definitely. And the Saturn, I love one thing Saturn do is make it come true. Great, and it make this deep fear comes true. So that's why even when the Babu mentioned about in his book talking about HIV has been discovered during this conjunction time, during previous conjunction time in the 1980s, and that was a big theme. I still remember I was a high school student, high school student, and I was what is that all about? Why so many people are scared? Why that guy cover his face? Don't want to show his face on the TV, but talking about death. Talking about a terrible virus. I was so scared too. And then when I was grow up and then aware about my sexuality, and I said, oh, that's directly related to me, because people were thinking you will be the next one if you don't behave yourself. And then that was a fear. And we realized during that time, many of us, we realized we are wondering, how could that happen? Is that by kiss, or is that by shaking hand? And or don't get approached to that guy or that person because you might die. That is a fear of a death with HIV. And then think what we have during 2020.
Yeah.
Or even, I want to show you one thing, because we call it COVID. Do you know, but you probably still remember, or if you still remember, or if you are from especially East Asia, in 2020, 2002 and 2003, there is a also similar pandemic in the Asia. We call it SARS. That is the COVID version 1. That was the COVID version 1. So we now know that the virus caused the SARS was COVID. And that was also, again, from South China to beginning with in the January of 2002, and that was Saturn Pluto opposition. There was Saturn Pluto opposition. So during that time, 2002, 2020, and even 1985, we are all kind of scared to death. Okay, in one way, we are afraid about to touch each other. In another way, that really, I think that kind of threat make us think about what is really essential for us, what is important for me. Do I really want to spend my time wasting my time for something else? Or if I'm going to have a risk to die, I want to take care of my family, I want to look after someone, or I want to look after myself. And is this person living with me is really the person I want to share my life with? That's why so many relationships change. During the COVID time, people either moving together and tied up tightly, or they just said, no, we just realized we couldn't cope each other anymore. We have to move out. We saw so many cases in that, and people change their career. People move out of the city because they just want to live. They used to live in the city and they want to just for work, but now they say, no, I want to spend more time to enjoy my life. So I think there is the things to make us aware about what is essence, that treasure hiding underneath of a Pluto. What is the treasure? And we need to dig it out.
It's a rebirth, isn't it? Because would we be having this meeting tonight if it wasn't for COVID and this sudden uptake of Zoom? Because all the meetings I used to go to were in person.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Actually, in the chat, somebody saying, Crystal is saying, one of the societal, how do you pronounce this? Societal effects, I feel, of the Saturn-Pluto conjunction was a way to get rid, Pluto, of the resistance we had about moving away from conventional ways of doing things, Saturn, in business. So suddenly everyone became familiar with Zoom, and many institutions figured out ways to use it, or other tech, to let people work at home.
I remember 20 years
ago, and you got it right.
Well, I remember 20 years ago, we worked in, I work in IT, people saying, well, it's crazy that people are getting on jets and flying to New York to have business meetings. This could all be done by video conferencing. And it could 20 years ago, but nobody was interested in doing it. It was COVID and the fact that you had to stay at home that suddenly made it absolutely ubiquitous. And now COVID's over, but most of us still work from home and only go into the office once a week, maybe. So it has been a permanent change. And it can be, in some ways, it's quite positive. It can be quite lonely for some people, and it's not very good news for city centre shops that are closing down because they don't have millions of people in the city centre buying sandwiches at lunchtime. But it is a genuine change. And of course, environmentally, it might be more positive to be working at home and not jumping in jets and going to meetings all the time that are in different countries.
Yeah, but I also wonder, with the Saturn-Pluto and the idea of Pluto and the idea of control, perhaps, I wonder, like, there was a moment, I remember, where people were discussing about, well, should I be paying for my internet, or should my work be paying for my internet? Should I be getting, because my chair, maybe it's not designed for me to be sitting on a chair for 8 hours. Should I be getting a good chair and my work should pay for this or not. And also with the time slots. I remember a lot of people had problems like it was not very clear, even though their time schedule is quite clear, because they're at home and you're working, it was like, come on, can you not check it just for a moment? So there was this whole thing about boundaries, perhaps, which is Saturn, and how to organize the new way of working.
Yeah. Yeah, I 100% agree. During this time, we are not really totally focused. We should not totally just focus on pandemic, but there's one manifestation and a huge manifestation about this Saturn Pluto conjunction. And I want to also, at the same time, I want to say something about Nela's comment on the area.
Yeah.
Say, can you really isolate the effect of Pluto Saturn from the rest? Definitely not. I think we should never do that. But we did talk about this, yes, because it's happening during the conjunction time, and we should not isolate because we have to always consider what's happening, all the other aspects happening. I think we should never isolate it. I agree with you, and that's just because we are talking about the coincidentally with the fear of death with 1985 HIV and also the COVID and the SARS altogether. It's kind of quite interesting. There's a trace there about we are aware about the threat of invisible things. And also we are afraid about, we see something and the death is that close to us. So I think we should never isolate this kind of event, especially it's quite interesting. I was, to be honest, this afternoon, I was, I know what we're going to talk about tonight, and I just like I know what I talk because in the 2019, I already make a presentation, so I was pretty relaxed. I was prepare my presentation for another conference next week, and I was talking about the other outer planet cycle. It's just like one after another. My head was becoming, just a little bit, a ratatouille or something, all mixed up together. So I was like, be careful about what are you going to talk, because you maybe talk about another cycle. And I was like, but they are all related. Like with opening with Saturn, Pluto, and Jupiter, Saturn. It makes sense. Yes, and especially like Nela said, we should not only treat it like, oh, this is only belong to Saturn Pluto, rather than nothing to do with the Jupiter Saturn cycle.
Yeah, and actually this is how Chris started, right? This idea that both cycles
exactly.
are going to a challenging period, right? Like a period in which we might have to make decisions about how to navigate them.
If we're allowed to bring other planets into the mix, one thing I'd say about AI that we have mentioned as one possible manifestation of this is AI also has a huge level of deception, because, for example, you can create fake images that people believe in. So Neptune must be playing into this as well. You get these deep fakes and so on. Well, deep fake seems to be technology, Aquarius, Uranus, Neptune, and probably Saturn and Pluto as well.
And it is very interesting because we are just stepping into the Neptune-Pluto sextile, because it was beginning in 60s. And then it stopped. It stopped forming the sextile between 1993 until recently. Until recently. They formed another sextile again. So interesting you mentioned about this AI and deep fake. It is true that it's still very difficult it is very easy to make something fake and put there, say, oh, this is happening. And if people don't really go examine it, you will just like be fooled and step into, doing something silly, I think. Yeah.
Crystal, have you read Crystal's point on the chat? To your point, Rod, in Scorpio, I feel the Pluto-Saturn conjunction was the beginning of a psychological confrontation with our fears and our othering of the gay community. So again, Pluto challenges us to acknowledge and hopefully release antiquated Saturn attitudes and behaviors within society and deeply inferior feelings in Scorpio. And this transformation begins with a crisis. At that time, the HIV crisis.
I think it's a very beautiful way to say it. Thank you.
Yeah, very
Yeah,
beautiful.
yeah.
And you know what I wanted to bring in also? The uh, I've checked the previous time, hopefully I checked it right. The previous time that there was this Saturn Pluto conjunction in Capricorn was in 1518. And this made me think of 1517 when the 95 Theses of Luther are published.
Oh, yes.
That they changed the way, I mean, they changed religion. They divided Europe into different religions. Basically, I mean, I'm shortening it up a little bit the whole process, but they basically created a whole new way of seeing religion. And I'm wondering, sometimes I'm wondering, um, okay, because back then probably the religious institutions were providing so much structure to society, the idea of Capricorn, right? And authority and structure. So now it's not the religious institutions perhaps that give us a sense of authority and a structure, but maybe something, I don't know, something about what gives us a sense of order might, I don't know, be exposed to some change.
Mm.
And it's interesting, this whole thing about AI and about the possibility of being deceived, the whole thing about the fake news or not. For instance, a lot of things are in the chat also about whether COVID was true or not, how did it begin, these whole things about the sense of unreliability on the information that we get and the things that happened. And I don't know, I wonder how it might all this play out. And Nila is saying astrology gives us a sense of order.
Yeah, could be. I just noticed Faye make a comment, and it was an amazing comment. I want to read it out. Is that okay? It still go back to the pandemic, but I think Faye make this, and it's great observation. It's true. When Saturn Pluto semi square was exact on the 6th of May, AstraZeneca withdrew the vaccine. That AstraZeneca was the first vaccine during the pandemic, and then on the it's interesting. It mentioned we step into next phases.
Yeah.
Thank you, Faye. I mean that is exactly. I don't know why I read the news, but I didn't think about it until Faye pointed out. Yes, exactly. Because if we look with the planetary phases, and the semi-square is one of the the first one out of the conjunction and step into the semi-square, and then from semi-square to the first first square. So that this is a significant meaning, and especially it's quite important. I think AstraZeneca is the first vaccine developed during the pandemic, and now the first withdrawal on the day we step into the exact semi-square. That was so interesting.
Yeah, it is, yeah. And I also wanted to ask you what you think. Like, it's true, we've been focusing a lot on the pandemic because it was so huge, right?
Yeah.
But I also would like to ask you, what do you think this may imply in a more personal level? This motion, this moving to the next phase that you're saying, Rod? In a more personal level, what do you think it might imply? And also, if you have some kind of suggestion or advice on how to cope with these times. Any of you, Rod?
Well,
I don't know.
I think there are a few things we already mentioned about in the personal. I think, of course, the world event is always there, and that's one thing I think I love what I learned from the faculty. And when Darby or Claire teach us about the mundane astrology, and still try to relate it to personal life, is like there is a huge layer outward in the mundane astrology, what happened in political, in economy, or in society changing. But how those things impact in our life. For example, we may have a facing maybe someone calling the huge general strike. And then you are a student, or you are maybe just an elementary school student. This strike may not have impact to you, but your parents may participate in the strike, and may not lose their job or change their life, and that impact into you. So let's see in this like layer and a layer, but finally still hit you in some way. So the Pluto-Saturn square or Saturn-Pluto square, semi-square, it may be we're calling up those fear or those things we are desire underneath, and we want to make it come true. And maybe it's telling you, maybe, I don't know, maybe I just made up or my personal experience say, maybe it's telling about, oh, time's up. Hurry up, doing something. Because we will feel again about the time is up. We have to hurry up to make something happen. Because if you don't want to regret in Saturn way, if you don't want to regret in Pluto way, and you have to make things, make your things, and the treasure those really important in our life. Maybe it's just this way, you know.
And this also matches the Jupiter-Saturn, the square, which is usually a moment of commitment. Like you have to choose what you're going to do.
Yeah, exactly. I think the two squares can be very challenging. But I think, as I say, in this particular one, Jupiter, Saturn are kind of working closely together. But this is a period when we're coming up to challenges with this Jupiter-Saturn square, with that battle between a conventional authority, Saturn, and Jupiter, who's a bit reckless and wants to break all the rules. I mean, I think Saturn gets a bad rap, but I say that because I've got Saturn in Capricorn, and it's the only dignified planet in my chart, so I quite like my Saturn, but I understand that most people don't.
Yeah.
Could I read out the comment from Crystal? In personal, where are we ourselves stuck in the antiquated attitude and behaviors? How might we embrace the possibility that have been developing in our life, but we have yet to fully embrace? Oh, beautiful! Thank you, Crystal. This is a very beautiful comment. I think yes, you really bring out the best of the Saturn Pluto. I just like I have to remind myself is always like when I chat with Alejo or something, I say, just remind me if I go too dark. When every time I'm reading the things in the mundane astrology, I usually just like, oh God, we're doomed.
You know what though? Sometimes these seeds aren't terribly obvious. A colleague of mine, when there was had a big Pluto transit going on, when she started learning astrology, and this I think was in the 80s or early 90s, and at the evening class, so she was doing astrology, it was just like a little local class, everyone said, oh my God, you've got this Pluto transit going on. Has there been a suicide in your family? Or has there been, you know, is your marriage breaking up? Is death a constant theme? And she was getting really worried about it. Went, no, I haven't done anything unusual, nothing obvious in my life at all. I mean, the only change I made in my life is I'm coming along to this evening class. Well, now, of course, her entire career is astrology. It's the major part of her life. That was Pluto planting a seed that she didn't even notice at the time. She was going to an evening class. So what? Wasn't that traumatic? It was quite good fun. But now it's her life. So it was utterly transformational. And transformation doesn't have to be painful. It quite often is. But sometimes, if you strike it lucky, you can get absolute transformation in rather a nice way without having to go through huge amounts of pain. So there is that element as well.
Yeah, there is this article on the last edition of the AA Journal that actually is talking about this idea that conjunctions are a seeding moment. So sometimes we are, as astrologers, was desperate to find a super event, and well, maybe it's just the seed that's being planted, and the event is going to come up later. Yes, quite interesting. And also, I wanted to ask you, we'll have a few more minutes. I don't know if you will know this, because if you haven't looked for it, maybe it's not going to come up so quickly. But Mark is asking if you have found any historical examples of how the Saturn Pluto semi-square might have manifested in the past.
You really don't want to go there. You really don't want to go there. I have a chart.
You have one.
Okay, but well, as I say, I give a talk in the A conference 2019, and then I did a whole lot of research about all the aspects of Saturn Pluto, and I just show you a few. All right, I just show you one. I just show you one, but
Bring on the dark, Rod.
yeah, I know. I apologize first. Usually because my mind is usually dark, but I think it's just we need to go through there and then just remind that because that was my focus. Okay, and so just this chart.
Oh, wow.
This is when Saturn Pluto semi-square. Al Qaeda was found in the Saturn Pluto semi-square. Exactly like now we have that was in previous semi-square. Okay, this was in previous semi-square. It doesn't mean anything. It doesn't mean anything, but it is come out of something come out of a stealing. So it's merged. The semi-square is merged out, comes out. So we are going to witness something, related to Pluto and Saturn, and it comes out. Okay, maybe it's like probably for people who thinking about the academic thing, we get rid of it. Maybe that something else comes out. Okay, but this is just I'm just showing off about a chart because I have a chart in front of me, so let me show you. But what I really curious is like Edna talking about the Jupiter in Gemini because on Sunday we are going to have it, and as a non-traditional astrologer, I know Jupiter doesn't like it in Gemini. It's in detriment side. So I'm so curious about how Chris and all the other fellow, other traditional astrologer read this Jupiter. I'm just curious.
Well, the first thing I'd say is Jupiter does have some dignity in air signs, even in Gemini. And I learnt my medieval art at Bernadette Brady's knee, and so I rather like her take on planets in detriment and fall. She said they're horrible terms, aren't they? She said medieval astrology comes across as being black and white, really right-wing, sexist, racist, homophobic, the full lot. But she said, in fact, what you've got to bear in mind is that that's because medieval society was like that. So imagine being the only person in your community, in your medieval village, with a different religion to everybody else. You're going to be drummed out of town at best and burnt at the stake at worst. So you have to fit in. If you don't conform, you're going to die. Whereas at least in the West and in many countries in the 21st century, you can be the only pagan in your village and you'll still go along to the church fete and sell your jams and crafts and things like that. And your neighbours will think, oh, you're a bit wacky, but I mean, so what? We all get on and it's great. So Bernadette says planets in detriment and fall are like that. They dance to a different tune. So rather than, Venus in detriment, meaning you're going to have a miserable life, you'll never find love, what it actually means is you're probably not going to get married, have 2.4 kids and roses growing up the cottage door. You're going to, your Venus is going to dare to be different. It's going to act out differently. It's going to dance to a different tune. And I think planets in detriment and fall just mean you behave differently, you act differently, they can work for you. And there have been some brilliant examples when you look at charts. I think one of them was the woman that was in Orange is the New Black, who is a trans woman and was born male and was bullied at school and attempted suicide when they were 12. But then after transitioning, she's now on the front cover of Time magazine and this, that, and the other, because basically it's like this planet that was working against me and forcing me to conform, and I couldn't conform, was almost destroying me. But now I'm allowing it to dance to a different tune. I'm out there, I'm doing this, and I can actually be my own person and be respected for who I am. In some countries, and certainly in medieval society, you weren't allowed to do that. You couldn't. So I think the fact that we're lucky enough to live in a society where we can do that, where we can behave differently, where we can dance to a different tune, means that's how we have to see those planets. So don't try and force your planets into a straitjacket. Let them do what they want to do.
Nice.
Love it. Yeah, love it.
Thank you, Chris. Everybody's saying thank you, beautiful, great point. Yes, thank you for saying this. Also, it helps me a lot when my Gemini friends who still don't get that you need to look at the whole chart ask me if they're going to be lucky this year or not. And I never know what to say because I'm thinking, well, Jupiter is going to go over their sun. But then I'm also thinking, but it's in Gemini, is it going to be good or not? So now I know what to answer. All right. So I don't know, Chris or Rod, before we say goodbye, if there's something else you want to say that maybe didn't come up, or if you want to share something about how people can reach you if they want to reach you, or if you have an upcoming event or something.
Well, just to echo what Rod said about the conference coming up, and it's lovely to have everybody here engaging in this discussion, joining in. The whole point of these talks is so that we can get to know each other. You can get to know us. The AA's remit is for anybody that's interested in astrology anywhere. I remember when I first joined, people said, "Oh, I can't join the AA because I'm not a professional astrologer." It's like, you don't need to be. You just need to be interested in astrology. Come and join us. Come and you know, if you can't come to our conference, come to our talks, you know, buy the occasional journal, or just come and join our Facebook group. There's a Facebook group called Astrological Association, and it has
Yes.
everything from, you know, very simplistic sun sign astrology posts right up to really detailed technical things about how do I, you know, how do I do this, that, and the other in solar fire. So just come along, join in the conversation. We want to promote astrology. So it's not a question of you have to come and join us. Just join in with us.
Okay, let me share a little bit about Jupiter in Gemini way. Let me share in Jupiter in Gemini way with you. If you believe that a kind of a £400 for over a week is too expensive for you, then I will tell you you are totally wrong. Because as a marketing person in the AA, I went back to check all the major conference, all their date and price. I guarantee you, our conference is cheapest one. I guarantee you. I can show you a spreadsheet. I can show you the spreadsheet. You want to see it? No, I'm not going to show you. Because I steal all the information, all the price from all the other conference. I'm trying to double check. We are the cheapest one. So, and also our topic cover all the area, you know, and we also remember one thing. We always encourage the new speaker coming up. We are not like a selector that, oh, he's famous, he can come. He's not famous, he couldn't come. No, we always support each other. This is the spirit of community, and that's help the AA conference to continue this line, this beautiful line. Please, so please come to join us.
No, Rod's right. It is excellent value for money, and it's lovely to be able to meet people in person. But we do understand that some people can't. You know, if you live in Australia, it's going to cost more to come here than it is to go to the conference. But you can still join in online. And another advantage of Zoom is it means that I remember I used to go to conferences, and the 4 talks I really wanted to hear were all on at the same time. And it doesn't matter now because you can catch up with all of them because the video is available for a month or 2 afterwards anyway. So
yeah, exactly.
And it's much cheaper. It's much cheaper online and certainly affordable.
Great. All right. So thank you so much. Where is it? It's in, what is it called? The place? I don't remember.
It's in a place called Hinckley, which is near Leicester. So it's right in the middle of England.
Yeah. Nice. Okay. You can get more information if you go to our webpage, of course, astrologicalassociation.com. Is it right?
Yes.
Right. Astrologicalassociation.com. Yeah.
Yes. All right. So thank you everyone for joining in and participating and bringing your energy to this gathering. Thank you, Chris, especially Rod, for bringing all of your insights. And I will ask if you, when you feel ready to go, you can just please exit the room so that Chris and Rod, we're going to have a little private chat. I don't want to kick anyone out. But we need to
thank you for organising it all, Alejo. Much appreciated.
Yeah, thank you, Alejo.
Thank you, everyone.
Can I just say thank you to everybody? This has been an absolutely brilliant and enchanting, highly stimulated conversation. It's just wonderful to be allowed to eavesdrop on such high-level astrology, such good quality chat. Thank you to all of you.
Well, thank you, Caroline.
Thank you.
And come along to our conference and you can mix with hundreds of astrologers, but they can mix with you. So
And can I also say thank you to Alejo? I'm sorry, I don't know how to pronounce your name.
Alejo is okay. You did well.
It is so wonderful when people are very direct and straightforward and say, "Can you please all exit? Because we're going to have a private meeting."
Because that's Latin American, so I don't know. Wait, let
Fabulous,
me stop
because
recording this.
as a